My name is Carter McCrell, and this is my Honors Biology Science Fair project. Okay. Alrighty. Sorry about that. For my project, I tested the effect of different pHs on earthworms. I decided to run this experiment so I could find the best pH in water for worms so that they can help redistribute the nutrients in soil, as well as such as aerate soil, help uh, plants grow better, stuff like that. Earthworms are extremely important for the growth of crops, and if they're stronger and bigger, they can help a farmer. They can help farmers yield bigger crops, more nutrient-rich crops, stronger crops, possibly even more disease because they are more nutritious. Um, if I could help earthworms grow and become stronger, better by changing pH, I feel it would be extremely helpful for farmers, and they wouldn't have to use pesticides or growth enhancers or insecticides, possibly. That's why I really wanted to find the pH for worms that is best for them to thrive. In studies that I read and found, they said, and from what I could draw from their readings, is that worms do better in a high or medium pH environment. My hypothesis was worms are affected by the toxicity of their environment, and my experiment will be based on the effect of different pHs on the growth and mass of earthworms. For my methods, first, I had to get the 4 pHs I was going to use. My first pH I already had, which was my tap water, which was what I was using as my control. I had a pH of 7.6, and then I had to create my other 3 pHs from that. To make my high pH water, I took a gallon of my tap water and added a half a teaspoon of baking soda. I then tested the pH of that, which brought to about an 8, which is about where I wanted it to be. And then to make my low pH, I used a half an ounce of white vinegar and added that to a gallon to make my low pH water, which was around 4.5 pH. So I had my alkaline and my toxic. And now using both baking soda and white vinegar to fine tune, I got my medium pH of about 7. After that, I found 4 pots for each of my trials and then filled them halfway with nutrient-rich soil. And I use compost, but you could use dirt outside if possible. I couldn't because it was the middle of winter and the ground was frozen and covered in snow, unfortunately. I would have liked to have done this during the spring or summer, but I didn't really have that choice. I then weighed and found the average of 10 worms for each pot, so 40 for each trial, 80 in total. And I placed them in the soil and then filled each pot the rest of the way. Label each pot A, B, C, or D, and then assign 1 pot to be your control water. That was my A pot. 1 to be your low pH. That was my B pot. 1 to be your medium pH, my C pot. And 1 to be my last pot. 1 to be my high pH, which is my last pot. The first time I averaged and weighed them, I added 80 milliliters of their each respective type of water, and then placed them in a safe and dark space. And then every 3 days, I would weigh and average the worms, and every other time I weighed and averaged the worms, I would add 80 milliliters of water. If I had added water more frequently, it would cause the soil to be very soggy, and I felt it would hinder the growth and safety of the worms. And then I repeated the last step until I had 10 sets of data for each pot, and then repeated this for my second trial. I did run both my trials at the same time, but that was so I just due to time constraints, I had to. With my data, I found that it was actually the lower 2 pHs that gained a higher average change in mass, while the 2 lower pHs actually lost mass, which infers that worms would do better in a low pH environment than in a high pH environment. My control and my high pH, which were my higher 7.6 and 8 pH, they lost about 0.1 to 0.2 in theirs, and then in trial 1, the control and low pH both gained 0.2 grams, while in trial 2 they stayed the same. Towards the end of my presentation now, this experiment found that water that has a lower or medium pH is better for the growth of earthworms. Specifically, lower pHs are better, but both low and medium pHs had good results. Most tap waters are slightly above medium pH, so it could work simply if farmers lowered the pH of their waters through baking soda or some other mass produced thing that could help lower the pH of water. And that way they can bolster their crops through the earthworms that live in their fields. Natural resources are just always there, so if you can help them, it would be perfect. If I were to run this experiment again, it would be for much longer, maybe even a year, with many more worms and many more different levels of pHs, just to really fine tune what I was trying to find. And also try and get a more accurate scale. I was just using a baking scale, so something that could go into decimals. Baking scale could only go into grams, and then into a single grams, no decimals, and then I would average that. And also try and perform it during the spring or summer, just because that's better for the earthworms. Thank you for listening to my presentation on my bio project for science fair. Thank you.